The boy suffered brutal punishment from the priest every day, and only when the school bell rang did the priest finally stop, yet the boy still looked unsatisfied.
Too bad, Father. I was just starting to enjoy myself.
We can do it again tomorrow if you like, Mr. Carroll.
Faced with his mocking attitude, the priest had already prepared for retaliation, but the boy, refusing to play by the rules, boldly skipped class the next day and ran off to the streets with his friends. No one could have imagined that this rebellious teenager was actually the brightest star on the school's basketball court. His good looks, fluid dribbling, and flawless shooting earned him not only the title of a basketball prodigy, but also special attention from the coach.
Yeah, we'll get a pizza and we'll make a night of it.
Actually, my nights are kind of busy right now.
He even caught the eyes of several scouts, hailed as a rising star with a limitless future. Yet the brighter the light, the deeper the shadow. There will always be those lurking in the dark, trying to trip up this rising star. The boy's name was Jim, raised solely by his mother, and having lost his father early, he wore rebellion like armor.
Hey, lady! Shut up!
Though Jim's charm could get him anything he wanted, he reserved all his tenderness for his brothers. He often visited Bobby in the hospital, his childhood friend and once the best player on their team. This time, he brought Bobby a basketball signed by the whole team. Seeing Bobby lying weak and pale on the bed, Jim's heart tightened, and he made a daring decision. When the nurse wasn't looking, he took Bobby out for a ride. Bobby sighed at how much the world had changed, then asked Jim if he still kept a diary. Jim pulled out a poem he had recently written.
Little kids shoot marbles where branches break the sun into graceful shafts of light. I just want to be pure.
The sweat rolling down on the basketball court, the deafening cheers of his teammates, and the hazy anticipation for the future made Jim firmly believe that this pure passion was something he could hold on to. Soon, Jim's team advanced all the way to the championship finals. The final game was fierce beyond measure. In the middle of the intense match, the small and cunning Pedro slipped into the opponent's locker room and stole their valuables. In the end, Jim's team crushed their rivals with an overwhelming victory. Just as Jim and his teammates were enjoying their championship dinner, the defeated rivals showed up at the door demanding an explanation. But Jim and his friends had been through such confrontations many times, and when it came to fighting, they never backed down. Soon, the rivals were beaten to the ground. Yet Jim noticed something off. The opponents had backup waiting, so he quickly signaled his friends to retreat without hesitation. That night, they began dividing the money among themselves. Suddenly, a woman approached and offered herself in exchange for $15, only to be insulted by Jim on the spot. Deep down, he despised such self-degradation. What he didn't yet understand was that people's pursuit of happiness often stood separated by an invisible wall. Later, Jim visited Bobby again, and to lift his friend's spirits, he took him to watch dancers perform on stage. He thought the sight would awaken Bobby's energy, but Bobby's eyes were filled only with exhaustion. When Bobby asked to leave, Jim began to realize that the joy he sought was no longer the same as Bobby's. What Bobby needed wasn't excitement. It was understanding and companionship. The next day, Jim was writing intensely when a basketball suddenly hit his head, and a man appeared before him. Jim initially thought the man was looking for trouble, but after witnessing Reggie's superb basketball skills, he excitedly challenged him to a game, momentarily forgetting life's troubles. Little did Jim know, Reggie would become the turning point of his destiny. The next day, Jim and his friends went cliff diving for fun, teasing a passing cruise ship and showing the reckless pride and wild spirit unique to youth. One by one, his friends jumped, leaving only Jim and Neutron standing on the cliff. At that moment, Neutron looked at him with a mysterious expression and said,
Surprise, trust me, all right? Ow, don't mess around, man. All right, you ready? Come on. All right, ready? Let's jump. All right, on 3.
Following Neutron, Jim entered a strange apartment. A woman looked him up and down, a faint, ambiguous smile curling at the corner of her lips, and then she handed him something. Jim hesitated for a moment, but under her teasing glance, he quickly lowered his guard. The instant he inhaled it, he thought he had found a shortcut to happiness, never realizing it was the first step into an abyss. Soon after, life dealt him a heavy blow. Bobby was gone. Standing before his friend's lifeless body, Jim couldn't believe that this frail, aged-looking boy was only 16. Grief flooded through him like a storm. Yet around him his friends still laughed and joked, recalling Bobby's past antics as if death meant nothing at all. Jim couldn't accept it, but Neutron insisted that Bobby's death had been fate. Just as Jim sank into despair, that fleeting sense of pleasure returned. As if guided by some unseen force, he sneaked into Pedro's basement, where something he never imagined touching was hidden. At first, he only wanted to try a little, but someone encouraged him to go further, saying that was the only way to truly reach ultimate pleasure. Fear filled Jim's heart, but desire soon drowned it out. As the needle pierced his skin, a rush of warmth surged through his body, and he felt as though he were floating in a boundless sea of flowers, every pain in life momentarily forgiven. But that false bliss vanished in seconds, replaced by deeper emptiness, despair, and torment. What mother could bear to see her son fall so low? Yet all her heartfelt pleas only made Jim more impatient. To raise money for illegal goods, Jim and his friends started with petty thefts, which soon escalated into outright robberies. At first, Jim kept convincing himself that it was just a small, harmless habit he could control. But this so-called hobby had already begun to eat away at every inch of his life without him realizing it. Whenever the uncontrollable urge hit, his body reacted violently, and a voice echoed in his head.
Just one more time, then we'll stop.
One day, just after completing a deal behind the school, Jim was caught red-handed by Father McNulty. Father McNulty had never liked Jim, and now he finally had something to use against him. During basketball practice that afternoon, Jim's cravings kicked in again, so he asked Coach Swifty for permission to go to the restroom to ease the torment. But his frequent excuses completely misled Swifty, who thought Jim was implying something else. And Swifty knew exactly what Jim was desperate for. But before Jim could even respond, he started to make a move, and Jim immediately fought back. This time, Jim chose to defend his boundaries. He had sworn countless times to quit this dangerous habit, yet the craving in his heart and the pain in his body made it impossible to stop. In the following days, he kept experimenting with new substances, even taking hallucinogens before a game. He thought it would boost his energy, not realizing it had already derailed his basketball dream. Neutron, who had always fought alongside them, looked down on this behavior and took a moment to speak kindly to Jim, trying to talk some sense into him.
Used to be about getting high, yeah, and playing basketball. But now it's just about getting high with you. You're blowing it, Jim.
Oh, come on.
No,
I don't
Jim.
need to hear this from you, Neutron.
Yeah, you do, Jim. Listen, no, Jim. I'm really proud of you, man. Everything's cool. You look great. I'll see you in the NBA.
But Jim was in no state to listen. On the court, his steps became unsteady. The ball was snatched from his hands before he could react. His eyes lost focus, and though he stared at the hoop, his vision kept drifting upward. Eventually, after a missed shot, he collapsed to the floor. Father McNulty saw everything. Pedro quickly went back to hide the goods. Father McNulty brought the police into the locker room to search for illegal items, but found nothing. Jim's basketball talent was being eaten away by his desire. Father McNulty ordered them to stay at school for investigation. Swifty even threatened to expel both of them. Jim's sanity was long gone, swallowed by his dependence, and he blurted out that he wanted to quit the team and drop out. Neutron was deeply disappointed by their decision, but there was nothing he could do. From then on, Jim became a full-blown delinquent. When his mother found out the truth, they argued again.
Don't you understand? I can't watch you kill yourself!
Yeah, Ma. You're never gonna see me again, alright? Just remember that.
Don't say that, Jim! Don't say that!
He picked up the trophy he had won from playing basketball and disdainfully threw it into the trash. When Jim ran away from home for the first time, he naively believed that as long as he had money, he could stand tall again. Under Mickey's persuasion, the three of them stole a car. They were told that if they delivered the car on time, they would get $1,500 easily. But with their minds clouded by illegal substances, they foolishly parked in a restricted zone, and the car was towed by the police. Mickey's brother came to retrieve it. Seeing what happened, he beat Mickey up mercilessly. Their vice had given them fake courage but stripped them of judgment. They wandered among drifters in a rundown place they called the headquarters. In Jim's twisted mind, these lost souls looked like his new all-star team. Late at night, Jim's mother prayed to God, begging for love and guidance for her son. But God remained silent. One day, the same woman who had come before appeared again, looking to buy something forbidden. But in this fallen world, Who would be willing to share what little happiness they had left? That night, Jim, Pedro, and Mickey broke into a candy shop owned by a Jewish family, hoping to score some cash, but found nothing except sweets and ice cream. In the chaos, Mickey found an old pistol. Then they prepared to leave, but under the influence of the substance, Pedro was in a dazed state and couldn't keep up with the order to retreat. Mickey even pointed the gun at him, yet Pedro didn't react. When Jim tried to stop him, Mickey suddenly hit Pedro hard, knocking him to the ground. At that moment, flashing police lights lit up the window. Mickey turned and ran. Pedro slowly came to and begged Jim to take him along. But the police had already reached the door, and Jim could only grit his teeth, turn around, and leave Pedro behind to be caught. Shaken, Jim and Mickey hid in a dim bar. Then on the TV screen, a familiar face appeared. It was Neutron, giving an interview at the National High School Championship. That should have been Jim's path. Mickey scoffed at it, but Jim stared at the screen, his eyes filled with loss and regret. He had once had a chance to make his mother proud, but now all that remained was a broken soul. From afar, he watched the angel who once gave him warmth struggle through life alone, while he could do nothing to help. Soon after, Jim returned to the place where he had first touched temptation, hoping to make some quick money. But they were just toying with him, not taking this beggar seriously. Because of illegal substances, Jim's life was filled with constant trouble. To get money, he disguised rat poison as illegal goods and sold it to others. When they found out, Jim tried to fight back, but his arms were as weak as cotton. The exhaustion brought on by his habits had drained every ounce of his strength. His nervous system began to weaken, and even writing, which once supported him, became difficult, while the inspiration that used to flow endlessly was now running dry. Bruised and battered, Jim collapsed in the snow, and just then, his savior, Reggie, appeared. When Jim woke up again, he found himself lying in Reggie's small apartment, his head throbbing painfully. Beside him, Reggie was flipping through the pages of his diary. Reggie believed Jim was a genius, someone who should never let his life be destroyed by illegal substances. Jim took back his diary, only to find the pages soaked and smudged. Reggie didn't try to hide it and told him directly that he had lost control of himself. Feeling humiliated and ashamed, Jim jumped up, yelling that he was leaving. But when he started putting his clothes on, he realized his belongings were gone. Reggie calmly pulled the item out and held it up. The moment Jim saw it, he begged Reggie to give it back. When Reggie didn't move, Jim began shouting and threatening him.
Oh, give it to me! Give it to me!
Just look at this!
In the mirror, he saw someone terrifyingly unfamiliar. He was no longer the boy sweating under the basketball hoop, no longer the young man who once wrote poems on the rooftop. He was just a hollow shell, drained of spirit and strength. Maybe it was because Reggie had walked through storms himself that he felt so much pain watching Jim struggle. Seeing him curled up on the floor, screaming in agony, Reggie knew better than anyone that he had to stay strong. This torment was the price of returning to the right path. To stop Jim from running out in search of more illegal substances, Reggie pulled a chair to the door and sat there all night, unmoved by Jim's pleading or tears. After a while, Jim finally made it through the worst phase, his body and mind slowly recovering. But that craving still lingered deep inside, like vines waiting to grow back the moment he relaxed. One afternoon when Reggie was out, the desire consumed him again. Like a madman, Jim tore through the room, searching for anything that could ease the pain. He found the money Reggie had hidden, and without a moment of hesitation, he grabbed it and rushed out the door. He went to find a girl he used to know, hoping she would lend him some cash. But the girl had long since freed herself from that nightmare, and now looked at him with nothing but disdain.
Hey, why don't you go buy yourself some pretzels, you asshole?
You!
No matter how Jim mocked or insulted her, his words couldn't hurt someone who had already climbed out of the pit. All he could do was turn away and pick up a few coins scattered on the ground. To get what he craved, he ended up selling his body, doing things that once disgusted him beyond words. In that pit of pain, Jim began to hallucinate. He saw Coach Swifty's face, mocking him as if to say he was nothing. After that humiliating encounter, Jim stumbled out of the restroom and hurried to contact Mickey. Too proud to admit where his money came from, he hid the truth. Soon after, the two of them bought illegal substances from a man on the street. Jim tried it and immediately realized something was wrong. Mickey's temper exploded, and he pulled out a gun. Jim, still clinging to a shred of reason, tried to stop him, but Mickey wouldn't listen, and a chaotic chase began. They ran up to the rooftop, the man cornered with nowhere to go. Mickey pointed the gun at him, and the man stumbled backward in fear. Then Mickey gave him a light shove, and the man lost balance, falling straight off the building. Seeing this, Mickey immediately abandoned Jim and fled alone. But the man's partners were waiting below, and they caught Mickey, beating him savagely until the police arrived. Mickey was later sentenced to 5 to 10 years in prison. And up on the rooftop, Jim narrowly escaped the disaster. Now he had nowhere left to go. With no other choice, he went home to ask his mother for money. Through the peephole, she saw her son's pale, broken face, and her heart ached. Still, she locked the chain before slowly opening the door. Hearing his desperate pleas, she steeled herself and refused, knowing that giving him money would only push him deeper into ruin. Jim burst into tears outside the door. When begging didn't work, he lost control and began shouting curses at his mother. In that moment, both mother and son, separated by the door, had tears streaming down their faces. At this moment, the mother was resolute. She couldn't let her son sink any deeper. After long, painful reflection, she made a difficult decision. Not long after, the police arrived in response to the call and took Jim away by force. Between love and reason, she chose the hardest path. She knew it might be the only way to save her son. Jim was sentenced to 6 months in jail for robbery and possession of illegal substances.
Shit, it's been hard, man. All I've been doing is reading these diaries and wondering how the hell I'm still alive.
That time behind bars became the turning point of his life. Inside the cell, the withdrawal hit harder than ever, tearing at him from the inside out. His diary became his only outlet in the darkness. Page by page, he poured out his torment, and through that pain, he slowly found clarity again. From then on, Jim never touched those illegal substances again. Months later, he was released. Now his eyes carried the quiet strength of someone who had suffered and survived. Later, Jim ran into Pedro by chance. When his former friend handed him illegal substances, he firmly chose to refuse. He walked away step by step toward the light. In the final scene, Jim joined Reggie's recovery outreach group, speaking at public events to warn others about the dangers he had lived through.
I think we all got it under control. Won't get strung out. This rarely works. I'm living proof. But in the end, just gotta see the junk as another 9-to-5 gig. The hours are just a bit more inclined to shadows.
This film is not fiction. It's based on a true story, adapted from Jim's own autobiographical novel of the same name. Every detail came from his real teenage years. At 17, he completed the Basketball Diaries. By 22, he had published 3 poetry collections and recorded 4 music albums. Perhaps all of us, at some point, have wandered near the edge. The Basketball Diaries isn't just a story of downfall. It's a story of finding a spark of light in the darkest of places. Jim did not completely lose himself in the end. He still had his pen, and those words, unknown to anyone, recording his undestroyed sensitivity and pain. Like all of us, even when we fall or lose our way, there remains a small, untouched place within, pure, honest, and uncorrupted. This film hurts so deeply because it is too real. It shows us that youth is not always about blooming, but about struggling. It's not about being illuminated, but learning to glow in the dark. This story is dedicated to everyone who has ever felt lost, but never gave up on themselves. May you walk through the chaos and still see your original self. May you cross the edge and finally find your way back to the world.